heard some really great discussions here, and I see some full sheets, so we're going to share out and just hear each other out. Typically, we choose a couple top ones that we would review and come back to at each meeting, but I think we'll just share out and hear how this goes and then go from there. So this group has asked to share first.
Guess I'm sharing.
Yeah, you're sure.
I'm ready. All right. So how do we work together? We have respect. We thought that looks like listening and allowing others to finish. We have advocacy, that we need to look at the roles that we all play within this group and respecting what those are and what those bring to the table. Open-mindedness and listening, we felt those kind of stood for themselves as far as what those looked like. Transparency, not hiding agendas, speaking up, being open. Positivity, we felt was really an adjective for some of the other ones. And then collaboration was respect, working together, and helping others to understand.
Any questions here?
I have one. I move that Randy write down everything that we have in this written ever.
They're in classes. Very good.
Not that I'm saying.
You guys ready? Would you like to share?
Sure. My handwriting's not as neat. So we covered a bit of ground, but we had integrity. Oop, thank you. Just that we need to be able to trust each other, respect, everyone's input matters. Accountability, be accountable to each other in the village. We need to be able to do our work and for the meetings. Flexibility, keep an open mind. We are here to help the community. So that one was more like even if you come into a meeting with one mindset, be willing to change it based on people's opinions. Inclusion, work to include those not represented. Open-mindedness, consider everything. Caring, think about everybody. Consensus, I'm having a hard time reading my handwriting. We may not all agree, but we can all agree to support the decision that the group comes up with. Patience, understand everyone's experiences and skills, and it might take, everyone's going to present them differently. Participation, help the group and voice your opinions so you can benefit the task force. So just make sure you're participating since we are taking a seat that not everybody was able to be on. Commitment, we all chose to be here, so let's work with it. And grit, I liked that one. We just have to work through it, stick it out. It might be a little bit more work than we were anticipating, but it's for a really good cause.
Wow. Would you mind ripping that page up and I'll put it up here? This group's ready to go. Thank you.
We're ready.
Okay.
We picked, I'm just going to read them and then how we drafted them together. Open-mindedness, respect, integrity, and listening. And we thought all of those kind of went together with that you needed active listening to different opinions, that you had to give everyone equal and a chance to express themselves, and you needed to listen with open-mindedness and stuff. So we thought that those four kind of fell in the same thing. Positivity, we're all excited to be out here and do our work. And then dependability and reliability and respect, we thought were kind of tied together, coming prepared, ready to take on the agenda for the night and just being ready for what was expected of us. And then the other thing that was talked about was self-control. We thought that there's going to be a lot of hot topics and a lot of hot buttons for this, and to control your own emotions during the process of this, because it could be pretty hot topics sometimes, I think. I think we all probably come to this with different ideas of what we're looking for.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Alright, well, we went around the table, we just gonna pick one. Inclusion, we want to make sure everyone has a moment to participate, whether, if someone's taking over and we need, someone's being quiet, hey, what is your thoughts? Mindfulness, we want to be aware of each other, as a neighbor, kind of the golden rule. Equity, we may not think the same, but we are here as equals, but we also have to keep in mind that there's others who are not and do not have the privilege of being here like we do. Innovation, we want to think deeply, explore, and keep researching, don't just stick with the status quo. Discipline or efficiency, we want to keep on task and keep moving forward. And then we all kind of agreed that collaboration, we just need to work together, that's the whole point of it.
So I'll note there's a lot of overlap, and then there's some groups that came up with words that that others didn't. Now, here I need to ask Todd a question about parliamentary procedure and open records. Typically, I'd ask a couple of people to take these and to whittle it down, to look for commonalities, whittle it down, and come up with 5 or so guiding principles. And it sounds like that would break open records protocol if they were to do that.
You're wanting members of the group to do that, or did you want staff to work on that and come back and try to come back with?
I was hoping members of the group would, but I want you to tell me whether that's possible or not. The staff could do it.
There's an attorney in there.
Well, you know,
Call it a
I'm
subcommittee.
attorney, but I think that will be possible, but I think you want to note that you're going to have a meeting and that you're going to have, you know, like a subcommittee, and then it can be done.
Okay.
And that's not a hard thing. You call it the values subcommittee.
The value subcommittee.
And they just need to pick when they're going to meet and meet at the village in a room. Put a notice up that we're going to talk, and that's about it. Then you don't have a problem. If it's going to be members of the committee. At least that's my opinion.
That okay then? So what we want to end up with is a set of values that everyone agrees with, that you can always go back to in deliberations, but also working agreements. And those working agreements are a little bit more practical. We've got a couple of them up here of voice your opinion, listen to others, those kind of things, active listening. Those are much more how you are in the moment when you're here. And the values are things like inclusion, something that's really guiding the committee. So is there anyone that really loves doing this kind of thing and wants to help craft that wants to be the values and guiding principles wordsmither?
So does it have to be done as a group or one person? Like, I wouldn't mind doing it, but I don't have time to like 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
You know, so it depends on.
If you want to take a first shot at it, I think that'd be fine.
I could do that.
If the group agrees to that.
Sure.
Is there anyone on the group that would like to look at what Tiffany comes up with and help her out? Okay.
What's your name? Thank you.
It's spelled wrong, but that's close enough.
And then go through Todd to
Yes.
communicate the document.
Sure.
Okay.
So your thought is they're gonna finalize it. It's not coming back to this group to rediscuss. They're gonna come up with the document and then it's distributed.
They're going to come up with the document and it will come back to the group at the next meeting to look at and make sure they're happy with and can agree with. And then it's just something there that's a reminder that's really guiding you. All right? Very good. That's very good work. Put this up here, and Tiffany will either take pictures of it or you can take those pieces home. All right, so what we did was both values and working agreements got consolidated, which is good because we're behind schedule, so that works very well. The next part is really thinking about the expectations and outcomes that the community has for this group. And this is just a chance for everyone here to share what you've heard from community and what you think are realistic outcomes for the committee. So we'll just do an open discussion. I'm going to ask the question and then let's see if there's anyone who wants to weigh in on this. And the question is, what are the expectations that the community has of what this committee will do? And what are the realistic outcomes for the committee?
I can start. A lot of what I've heard outside of our community from groups like Capital Area Regional Planning Commission and when we did a future urban development area study, which was done through CARC also, is that more communities in the area are trying to move towards more density and more housing that can be more livable housing for people that are of a different income than we might see here in Waunakee. And so even when we were doing our food study, the other communities that were in that were trying to make a point to us. You know, Middleton is trying to make a point to Waunakee. Madison has always done that at Carc. We're taking a bigger share of lower income housing in Madison than you are out in Waunakee, and you need to start sharing. So when I think about what one of our outcomes is, I think we have to actually think about what other communities, how they might view this, and how they might see, what is Waunakee doing here? Are they just doing more of the same, or are they doing something that is more inclusive in their community? And so I would like to see is whatever we put together, it's something that when it's shown to a Middleton or a Madison, they say, that's what we were expecting to happen. We were expecting to see a bigger share of lower income housing perhaps, or more affordable housing or something in Waunakee, so it's not all foisted upon us.
Anyone want to react to that or add to that?
Interesting notion. It's all just,
You know, I'm in Westport, I'm not in Waunakee, so I hear, I mean, I live in Waunakee, I've lived here forever, but I'm just, no, I'm saying that in Waunakee, you know, my kids are out of school now, so I don't hear what's going on at school like I used to, except when Randy wants to tell me something. So I would be curious to hear what somebody would say that they have heard, you know, in Waunakee, in some of the meetings and, you know, at Rips, wherever, you know, because I don't tend to hear that kind of stuff, what people are expecting of this.
I think that's one really good thing to keep in mind, you know, affordable housing. Do we have enough affordable housing for people who live here, or do they have to go someplace else? And also what other people think of us, I guess, is important, but we were primarily focused on how are we serving our residents, meaning at all levels that we are providing, you know, moderate housing, low-income housing for the people that need it.
This is kind of from experience. I have 4 sons who graduated from Waunakee High School. When they got married, they all looked for housing in Waunakee. They would have loved to be part of the community. They started looking and they found out they could have a lot more house in another community, so they are not here. And I feel that because of that, we're having a drain in our community. Young people will in the future be fire department, EMS possibly. They are contributors to the community, and we are losing them.
As an employer, we're just working on hiring our 50 people that will work at Bright Star Senior Living. Of the 15 people we've hired now, only one of them lives in Waunakee. We just are not finding a group of employees at our $13 to $14 an hour aid level that live in Waunakee. So they start talking about, well, I'm not going to be able to drive here, you know, I can buy a bus and go to Madison and run a bus schedule to bring people here. You're not getting people that are going to be immersed in the community, which is real important to us.
The reactions?
This is not really on the lower income housing side, but a lot of my clients, when just keeping in mind like why do people do move here, is I hear consistently, or you know, it's just our location where I get a lot of commuters, a lot of people that work in Madison, but the husband might work west side and the wife works east side, so we like here to be in the middle. We're close to the airport for people who have to fly, close to the interstate for people who actually do work in Waunakee and come back. So I think it's just interesting to see where people are coming from too.
And it reminds us that there is a whole section about commuting patterns that would be important to look at. Let me bring the conversation back to the community here. Do you think there's any expectations from community residents of the committee outside of deliberating about what is the housing mix that's necessary?
I think that members of the community are divided in many respects between the old timers and the new people who are moving in. And there's a great difference in expectations and wealth. And I think they would like some sort of a careful consideration of which way we want to grow in the future and how we can get there. And, you know, with all the recent expansion, people are needing to think how we can plan cautiously to arrive where we want to go.
Anyone else? Any other comments or reactions? So there's a lot of pieces in the mix, and we'll revisit at times. Is this committee doing due diligence to address all those pieces? The pieces of adequate employee housing, senior housing, affordable housing, housing for people who have to commute in different directions, sharing the load essentially. And one of the sessions will look at the context, the larger context of the county. So open minds, open hearts. It's good work that I look forward to working with you, not contributing, but to hearing the discussions unfolding. So with that,
I have one piece of information that feels like I don't have access to because I didn't go to village meetings, council meetings, relative to the discussion that took place with the housing on Main Street that was denied and what sentiment. So I'm coming here without a lot of information about what has just recently happened here relative to the county. Is there any way that are the archived minutes of the meetings that would be helpful for me to review that might help shed light on that? Or Chris, what would be your advice?
There's both video and minutes on most of the meetings. I don't know if your minutes are going to give you 100% accurate depiction. Just all the information isn't included in there. I guess what is it?
Coffee with Todd would probably be the best suggestion. Have a cup of coffee with Todd, and I think he can walk you through it in 45 minutes.
this committee can also make the decision that that's very important and that you want to either have a focus group with people in that area, or that you want to revisit it at committee.
There's YouTubes of all those. I would suggest you use YouTube. The Plan Commission one was very long with the T-wall. So was the village board, and a lot of public discussion in regards to those. So Waunakee has I think it's Waunakee YouTube, right, Todd?
I'll provide you with the links. I'll give them the links.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I also think it helps if you get the local paper. The Waunakee Tribune covers things very well, and there are all the public notices and things and agendas and reports of meetings that help give things perspective.
Jeff, is your goal to get a feel for what the community was thinking, what the board was thinking, all the above?
Both of those things.
I think you'll find that information. If not, I think Todd is a good person for you to look at.
I would clarify, Phil, that the impetus to this study was discussed by the village board probably 3 years ago. So that particular project isn't the cause of why we're here. So that it's been a priority of the boards for quite some time.
Thank you for that question. All right. We are now, Todd, are you ready?
Oh, you wanna go?
Yeah, we're
Todd and I are
at that part of the agenda where there's some information sharing. Okay.
Is that PGA or is that HDR? That's what I think.
So while they're setting this up, we just wanted to, Kevin and I are going to talk through aspects of some of the existing housing data in the village and some of the code issues, particularly as it relates to our housing mix and multifamily versus single family. It's been on the books for some time, and maybe Kevin, you can, when did that 25% rule go into place?
It was, it was recodified in 1998, but it's been on the books longer than I've been here, so more than 25 years.
Okay, so very, very basically, it attempts to suggest that the village desires a housing mix where of the total units that we don't have more than 25% of total units of housing in the multifamily category. That on its face seems simple, but in its application it gets complicated, especially and the questions come up even more so as we get close to this 25% threshold, which we are. We'll cover all those numbers in a second. But the complicated part of this is when is it an enforceable situation for us? If we're sitting here and we're at 25%, which we're not yet, we're not at 25% multifamily, but if we were, what the village could not do is in R4, R5, or PUD situations, we couldn't approve a rezoning that would accommodate development of greater than that 25%. That's basically
that's well stated.
But there's all sorts of other zoning areas in the village. There may be an array of different multifamily projects on the books, but not yet completed. And here's where it gets complicated. When we don't count the unit in the 25-75% ratio until a permit is pulled. So there may be zoned projects on the books ready to go, just waiting for the economy or the right time. And that permit once that permit gets pulled, we add those in, but those new projects can actually push us up above 25% on their own fruition. There's nothing we can do to stop that if there's not a rezoning required. So it's complicated and messed up. We hope that what we learn out of this group will result in policy that will allow us to flush this out better in a way that can be better understood and then better implemented going forward. You've been dealing with this longer than I have, Kevin.
No, I think you said it pretty well. I think you summed it up. I think what we're missing here is the next slide, and there is no next slide in terms of affordable housing and how we count affordable housing in terms of policy or ordinances. We don't have it. So I think that was something that we identified that we needed to have moving forward.
That's right. This 25% doesn't break out different groups or different particular types of housing. Well, if you were to take a peek at our comprehensive plan, which I'll also link on our website, on your website for this page, our comp plan gives a good deal of discussion about the need for various types of housing and addressing needs that face our community. This doesn't echo that. So we need to achieve some sort of jiving there. But the current lay of the land, Kevin, is that the next slide?
Housing types, yeah.
Housing types, do you want to go through those?
Sure. I'd say that by housing types, in terms of TARPC or other agencies, when they consider single-family housing, they count duplexes in the single family. So when you look at our current ratio, We have 10% duplexes and 67% single family. That puts us over that 25% ratio in terms of more single family than 75%. So we have less than 25% of multifamily.
To clarify, a duplex counts as 2 single families. So this total count, divide that by 2 and you have the number of duplex facilities, 2 per.
I just added this in here, just as a footnote. There's a number of lots that have been built upon and that are for sale. So they've been constructed and they're ready to build a house. But those are considered vacant lots. They're not in the ratio. And currently we have an inventory in the village about 325 homes, which is actually a little bit low in terms of what the inventory that we're striving for to make sure that there's a proper market out there in terms of lot availability.
And I think our next slide touches on that pace of growth that we've seen.
The first part was just the senior portion. I just wanted to, the point of this was just, if we just look at senior housing as a component, we're only at 8%, what's the other, and we're at, the multifamily is at 13. At 13, thank you. So obviously a big part of that senior housing is part of the multifamily.
We've this shows the housing starts by year. Waunakee back in really in the housing boom, we were way up there. You see in 2003, 4 hitting quite a number of permits pulled. Single families were in the 160s, I believe. And Kevin, again, I trust your history discussion here. That's when there was some intentional discussion on a part of the village board, and I think in collaboration to some extent with the school district about the impact of single-family housing growth. And at that point, there was, I don't know if it's a written or sort of more an unwritten agreement on a capacity that we, the village, felt was going to be reasonable going forward. That magic number was 125 permits a year. And I believe we were hitting that to the point where developers or builders were even taking claim on future year permits because we were hitting that cap. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it just appeared, 2004, I guess it was. It appeared, based on history and the way we were building new homes, we were going to be approaching 200 homes if we had an open market in terms of how many housing starts could occur. So the board, working with the school district at the time, said let's set a goal of 125, and so at that point, when developments came in, we would require phasing of those developments in certain years so that the phasing of those developments would never go over the 125 per year. Well, in 2007, 2008, we didn't need a phasing plan anymore because the market was clearly going to keep it well below the 125. In fact, we haven't been really that close to the 125, which is still a policy, but we haven't been that close to 125 since the housing boom.
Yeah, we hit our low of 39 single-family permits in 2010. That's been the low point in this history here. We've hovered up near about 100 the past few years. 94 and 96, the prior 2 years. This year we're currently at 64 permits. That's 10 fewer than the year before. So I think it's probably fair to say that we're going to be between 80 and 90 this year in all likelihood. The notion behind the 125 limit really has to do with service delivery, not just school district, but community as well. The building of neighborhoods includes infrastructure that requires maintenance. It requires snowplow blades and people to drive the snowplow trucks and police to patrol the streets, et cetera, et cetera. So there are philosophies of growth, and there's communities, and I've heard the mayor, I'm not speaking on a turn, he said it publicly, the mayor of Sun Prairie, Paul Esser, had said, we are open for housing business. If you want to build, come on in. They're eager for that. That's their philosophy of growth, and they're good. And I'm not questioning that it's wrong for them. It probably isn't. It's what they've decided. But what's right for the village has been this threshold, intentionally decided that represents a reasonable pace of growth that we can reasonably absorb. So that was done eyes wide open to what the mothers and fathers of the village planning commission and village board cared for us to look like and be. So that's, did I miss
That's
anything?
it. No, that's the last slide too.
Okay. It's a bit of the background. There's a lot more to it, and I bet we're going to get into the weeds more in data as we move forward. We're probably going to make the data even better than it currently is, I hope, as part of the process.
How are condominiums counted in the housing starts? Are they considered multifamily?
It depends what type of condominium. If it's a duplex condominium, it's counted as a single family, but if it's part of 4 units or 3 units or more, then it'll be counted as multifamily.
3 or more?
Yeah.
We found it really difficult to count condos and renters and owner occupancy or non-owner occupancy. In some cases, we don't even know. We don't have the information available to us as to whether someone is owning or renting. That's why the count works based on the actual design, the physicality of the building. Nyla?
Okay, senior housing, is that residential senior housing, or is, like being in a nursing home considered part of those numbers too?
Age restricted. So if it's age restricted, like could be a nursing home, it could be assisted living, it could be a deed restricted property over 55.
So it isn't just the senior apartments, it could be nursing home here too?
Yeah, so we would count those.
Okay, thank you.
When you say the data is not available about owner occupancy and things like that, are you saying that because the census data is so aged, or because it's just something the village doesn't have access to?
It is, in some cases, it's simply not information that we have. We can't ascertain it.
Okay.
Which is often,
I think you can.
which is often
through the census, you could obtain that data.
Well, that's
you're
what-
not
that's
you're
what-
not going to be able to count it down to unit number.
No, not to you number, but just like, at least by like census tract, right, like that you
That
could
part's
see
the
that, right? Okay, sure.
But home X on road Y, if somebody's renting it
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
owning it, is, and then with whether names, first names, it's complicated.
Sure.
I think we've hit the data pretty well to make an argument that there's some weaknesses in our ability to firmly say that this is exactly the number. We're admitting that there's a little bit of challenge in that. Call it the plus or minus factor of some minimal percent. Randy?
If I could just add one thing, you made the connection with the 125 in the school. That was certainly a conversation that took place probably 15, 18 years ago, if I recall. But part of it is built on, it just as Kevin and Todd said, it's built off managed growth. But it's also built off, and I realize this is on housing, but the connection to schools on growth is huge. Because the state funding system for schools is built on student growth. If you don't have growth or you have declining growth, your funding goes backwards. So those are the pieces that we work very closely on, is trying to make sure we have managed growth so that we can all work together on those pieces. But the school district does need a positive growth number in order to stay in a positive light within the school funding formulas. So just wanted to make that connection as well.
And as part of this too, the district is a district. It's not just Waunakee, so there's houses coming from other areas.
That's correct for the school.
That's right, that the school takes into account. That's right. This is our portion.
Yeah, this is village boundary.
District.
Yeah, this is village boundary. Part of the reason why I think there was support on the board's level to have Tom involved, when it comes to where people choose to live, there's the line, you don't really see the line necessarily. That the impact of housing on a community doesn't always care about the border and crosses over. So Mary Lake subdivision, for example, is a vibrant piece of the housing mix here that's not in Waunakee. Bishop's Bay is becoming that as well, and there's other communities in other towns too. I don't know how we're going to fit that into what we're talking about. It's going to come up at some point, but I don't know, how big is the animal get?
Yeah. Well, look at the data surrounding the surrounding communities, but as you're inferring or mentioning, those decisions happen outside the borders of what this community has been tasked with. We can affect those decisions, or we'll consider them with circumstances.
It is important, though, for everybody to know, if you don't, and why I'll urge you to take a look at our comp plan, is the village's comp plan was actually completed in concert with Westport. We admit that a majority of the village's boundary is shared with Westport. And we've come to agreement on on a wide array of aspects of our growth and development, change, or areas we care not to change. And that's illuminated in the comp plan. We address housing in there. It's a component. And we found wide agreement on a lot of areas. So I think that's important to note that we're friends in that. You may have seen the, let's say the Windsor to Forest debacle of 10, 15 years ago, which was really complicated and challenging. We've been able to avoid that in our history recently here.
And just to take that just one step further, which I'm sure everybody's interested in, that the city of Middleton actually adopted that plan because they have extraterritorial zoning in Westport, just like Waunakee has extraterritorial zoning in Westport, and they adopted that plan for use in that area. So 3 different governments adopted this pretty good plan. And like I was telling Hannah, it contemplated putting together a task force to deal with housing. So that's good.
As we move on tonight, if this spurred questions that you think of later or weren't comfortable asking here, please send me a note or call, and I'll be happy to try to get those answers for you. Or find someone who can. Okay, good?
Yeah, and as we're going through this is a lot of information that we'll be taking in over the course of our meetings every night. And so if you find yourself waking up at 4 a.m. with a burning question, send me an email. Don't pick up the phone. But at 6 a.m. I'm up, so you can pick up the phone. We'll get those answers to you, because it is a lot to take in, and sometimes when we leave a meeting, we don't always realize the information that we might want to reflect on over the next few days. So we've talked about a lot already today. What questions do you all have as we get ready to wrap up? I say wrap up and everyone's like, I don't have a single question. Right?
Kristen, what communication with you, is that regulated by any open meeting information? You just invited us to email to you, is that okay?
Questions, yeah. Yeah, and as with any work that I engage in a professional capacity as a member of the university, all of my emails and my personal emails that might accidentally get sent to my work address are subject to freedom of information and open records laws.
So it's okay to do that?
It's definitely okay. Yeah, and it's preferable to do that than any other form.
Sure.
Send me a Facebook message. Things get really complicated. But if you send it via email, then we're following all of the rules. We can use transparency.
And your email's in the website?
It is on the website, and I will actually, because I don't have it on here, let me type it up right now onto the screen. And thank you for mentioning that. I use my email all the time and forget that others might not have it.
Jeff, really the 2 people to send to are Todd and Kristen. Any of your questions or anything, your information you're looking for, those are the 2. And there's no issues with sending that, it's just if you send it to the rest of us. Yeah. No reply all, just remember, no reply all.
This is the world's longest email. Kristen, K-R-I-S-T-I-N, Kristen with 2 I's. Wow, that's my daughter. So sorry about that, and her friends. They're a little older now.
Yes, they are.
They are. All right, Kristen, K-R-I-S-T-I-N .Runge, R-U-N-G-E, at ces.uwex.edu. I check it obsessively. So you'll get a fairly quick response from me unless I'm out of town, in which case you get an immediate response saying I'm out of town. And I often, for work, am out of town for the day in another community. But as soon as I get the email, I'll acknowledge it and hopefully get you an answer right away. And if I can't get you an answer that day, the day after, one will be coming as soon as the information is revealed in whatever way it needs to be. Yeah. So Other questions that you have? All right. As far as communication you can expect to get from us as a committee, Julie will be sending out the meeting notices and the meeting packets. There typically will be, as there was for this week, a pre-work assigned. Sometimes it'll be information like reading. Sometimes it might involve writing a little bit, as we did today. And that we do ahead of time so that when we come together as a task force, your time is used productively. It also gives you an idea of what we're going to be discussing for that. At no point do we have plans to ask anyone to read long and difficult academic papers. You will have people that write them that will be coming to speak to you about what they've learned from these long and difficult academic subjects. But when you need to know that information ahead of time, it will come summarized to you in a PowerPoint, in bullet points, in plain English, without a single math equation. So, that's the way I like my information. So, that's what you can expect from us. Use my email whenever you have a question about anything at all. Use Todd's email. You've got Todd's email as well. With that, unless there are any other questions, or Todd, or Adam, Kevin, Sharon, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Introducing Adam. Adam Bentley is the assistant administrator. He'll be here for a majority of the meetings, helping out in different ways, doing research, providing support as needed. Hi.
All right. Our next meeting is Thursday, October 11th, in this room at 5:30 this time. And our focus is going to be on amenity development and community development and how that is related to, sometimes it impacts housing, sometimes it's just related to housing, but how that involves the work of you as a task force. So with that.
So I said very vocally that I wanted to say thank you to all of you for being part of this committee. We had people that wanted to be on this committee that we just didn't have space for everyone. And for those people that are coming from the community to these meetings, I always want to have a spot that they can actually give some input to us at the end of the meeting if we have time. I think that's so anybody who's here, if you'd like to make any comments about what happened this evening or ask questions, feel free, please.
As a community member, one of the things I would set as an expectation is defining what and how much Waunakee wants to participate in the capital area regional planning and what that looks like for us. I love Waunakee. I moved here because it's unique and special and not part of Madison or Middleton. So I guess I would hope that you guys would suss that out a little bit. Thank you.
So there's going to be a website where we can look at some of the materials that the group is looking at, or how, if we're not at large or anything, how do we get to access to the materials?
There is a website. If you right now, if you go on the web page and go under government committees, this task force is listed. You can click on it, and that page will grow and grow as we do our work.
So packets and everything will be there, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the packet for this meeting is already up there. We'll get the videos up there, and then as I made reference to things like the food study or the comp plan, the slides, pictures of Kristen's kids, whatever. We'll get all that will be added.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. I'll just I need a motion to end this for somebody.
Will we adjourn?
I'll second it.
Second by Nyla. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.